Transfiguration Sunday, which of course means we are right on the heels of Ash Wednesday. I can't explain the story or why it was important to Luke to state what Moses, Elijah, and Jesus talked about. I can't explain why this gospel says after 8 days and the others express 6 days. In Luke, this happens on the mountain. What I can say is that it happened in prayer. The transfiguration takes place within the praying. There are plenty of divine human encounters reported in the Bible. You've got Moses at the burning bush, Jacob with his ladder full of angels, and Job, of course, you have with the voice out of the whirlwind. All of these events were, cracked doors between this world and some other, brighter places where God is no absentee landlord. All I can say is that we all have epiphany moments in our lives. We just need to identify them as such. Years ago, I was asked to be one of the prayers at a charismatic prayer evening, and I said, no way, not me. The group kept insisting that I partake, and my response was, I don't like that praying in tongues. I don't do that. And I somehow don't even believe in people falling down like you see. So I just kept insisting, no, I'm not going to participate. And they kept insisting and said that they had prayed about who should be the third person in their group and felt very strongly that they were inspired by God to get me to do it. In the end, I did participate. I found that I got lost in the prayer experience. And after praying over one lady especially, I knew that the prayer wasn't from me. It definitely was the Holy Spirit. I was the conduit of the Holy Spirit because I prayed over her. And at the end of the experience, I really didn't know what I said. I was totally lost. It wasn't me. The words were coming out of my body, but it wasn't me. So, and when the three of us had finished, she just grabbed me and hugged me so tight, and she just thanked me over and over and over again for understanding what was going on in her life. And really, I had absolutely no idea what words I prayed, what the feelings were that I was expressing. I just prayed over her, and the result was she was moved and touched, and she was a changed person. I mean, she stood tall. She was a free person and a person just glowing. I was just the instrument. And the experience, I want to tell you, it scared the bejeebers out of me. The prayer meeting was in the winter. It was on a very cold night. And to this day, I'm kind of a little reluctant to participating in that kind of prayer service. It totally, I was drained. I returned home from the experience, from just being there and praying over so many people. And I realized it wasn't me praying, it was the Holy Spirit. And I was drenched from just sweating. My wool slacks and sweater were soaked. I couldn't wait to get home and put on dry clothes. I had never experienced anything so dramatic as being so caught up with the Spirit in the prayer. That experience of being in one of those groups, that offered prayer over others changed me forever. It was a mountaintop experience. Sometimes the power of an experience, it just can't be captured for posterity. Consider the moment when musicians and conductor and audience, are all just swept away by the music, or a ballet, just so beautiful it takes your breath away. Or the word. Sometimes it seems spoken directly to you, that you feel it's God speaking directly to you. These are moments that cannot be captured. They must be experienced and treasured in sense memory and with some measure of, ah. On one of our trips to Ireland, my husband did the climb of Crowpatrick in County Mayo that overlooks Clew Bay. County Mayo happens to be the home place of my dad's family. My grandparents on my dad's side of the family came from County Mayo. I actually when we went to the cottage where they were, I snipped a piece of a plant from there, and we still have it. I was not on the mountain climb. I was on St. Clair Island for a summer study, so he took the ferry back across to do the climb on one of the afternoons. And tradition states that St. Patrick spent 40 days up at the top of that mountain praying there for Ireland's deliverance from paganism. And the last Sunday of July is a pilgrimage to the peak that so many people participate in. So Jack joined the many who climbed the day he went to the top. Many were walking over the sharp rocks in their bare feet as an act to seek God's forgiveness. And those cobblestones are like this size. So it's not an easy climb by any standard. The climb is hard, and for the barefooted, very painful. And at some places, people actually climb on all fours. Some become injured and are carried down by rescue teams. So after a couple hours of climbing, he reached the top and visited the tiny chapel at the peak. In Ireland, it's called a thin place. The door between this world and the next had cracked open for a moment. Only the light was not on the other side. Instead, it lit up where a bunch of the wet, tired people whose feet were hurt, they were all just walking around with faces as bright as candles. There is no shortage of epiphanies in this world, no shortages of thin places where one encounters the divine. In one of her children's books, Catherine Marshall, some may remember her, tells the story of the boy with the shining face. 4 children from an Indian village in the far west attempt to climb a towering mountain, certainly bigger than Crowpatrick. The so-called mountain in Ireland would be next to our Rocky Mountains. It would be a hill. These children are to report back to the chief and bring a twig from a place where he or she turned back, decided not to climb anymore. The first child brings back a cactus leaf, and the chief knows that it is from the base of the mountain, since it is a desert flower. And the next child comes with a cottonwood twig, showing that she made it halfway up the mountain to the springs. The third child brings a pine twig from three quarters of the way up the mountain. And finally, that last child returned. The last child returned, and his hands were empty. His face was shining. Now, the old chief's face glowed too. I knew it. When I looked at your face, I knew it. You have been to the top. You didn't need any twig to tell me. It was written in your eyes. You alone have seen the glory and the peace of the mountain. Now, Catherine Marshall concludes, the very same thing happens to you and me when we have been with God and talked to God in prayer and felt that holy presence in our hearts. It shows on our faces. It shines in our eyes. We don't have to tell anyone. Other people will see it and know and be glad for us. You see, to be transfigured and transformed by the power of God is not something we can understand or explain or make happen. Instead, it is something that it happens to us if we open and pay attention, if we condition ourselves to climb the mountain, if we take the irrational step of offering ourselves as a channel of God's grace. In the wilderness of Lent that now stretches before us, let us become faces of holiness for others. May it be so for you and for me. And the church said,